Hello and welcome to the October edition of Community Connect. This month's guest is Quentin Brunsvold. Quentin is the fire chief of the Marshall Fire Department. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a good timely week to have you as my guest. So, as always, we'd like to try to recap the previous month, which was September. So let's kind of talk a little bit about September. And then we'll get into the program with Quentin, and also we'll do a preview of October. So in September, the Minnesota school, the MSHSL approved fall sports to come back. So we had limited sports like cross country, clay target, tennis, swimming, and soccer were all back. That made some people happy, but thankfully also in September, we saw football and volleyball approved. And Quentin, how nice is it to have those two sports come back?
Man, it's just awesome to finally have that stuff so you can watch it, have something to do. I mean, yeah, I'm just glad it's back.
Right, and mostly for everybody will be watching it. It'll be super limited, even though I know there's a lot of working going on to try to get some attendance at these. The Shoot for Hope event, this is a nonprofit in town. It's called Hope Harbor. They had an event out at Shooter Sporting Place on Friday, September 18th. They had a good turnout, very popular type of activity this fall, clays and shooting, hunting, that sort of thing. So thank you to everybody that came out to Hope Harbor. The fourth annual Craft and Vendor Show was on September 19th. This was the first major event that the Red Baron Arena's had since the COVID hit back in the spring. So congratulations to Cassie and her team on a really successful event out at the Red Baron Arena on the 19th. The Relay for Life of Lyon County also had an event out at the fairgrounds. Thankfully, they had wonderful weather. The Relay for Life has always had just terrible weather. And thankfully, they were able to honor Sandy Fultz, and Sandy was the speaker this year, and thankfully they had good weather.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, to honor Relay for Life, we actually turned the back of the fire station. We backlit it purple, which was awesome.
Nice.
Little secret, we didn't actually have purple lenses. We did, but they didn't really come through very well. So we changed them to blue, but nobody knows except now I told everybody.
Right, well, they'll be okay. So yeah, so thanks to everybody that came out to the fairgrounds to honor Sandy and the Relay for Life. And lastly, I wanted to kind of touch on, we had a return of our Business After Hours event. In September, we had it at Shays. We had about 30 to 40 people there, which is a little bit low, but it's expected as we ramp up our Business After Hours events. Thanks to everybody that came to that. So, all right, let's move on to our event, Quentin. Quentin has been the fire chief now, for 2 years?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. So again, thanks for being here, Quentin. It's a very timely week. Obviously, this is Fire Prevention Week. A lot of things going on in the fire department, especially this week. So explain how the fire department works. How many staff do you have? How is it structured? What other roles does the fire department do besides the obvious of putting out fires?
Yeah, so we have a staff of 45 people. It's a paramilitary organization, and it's kind of made up of one fire chief, 3 assistant chiefs. We have 4 captains and 4 lieutenants, and each captain and lieutenant, they make up a truck company, and underneath them are typically between 6 and 8 firefighters that do the daily tasks of checking the apparatus, make sure it's good to go, make sure it's full of water, make sure it's full of equipment, and all the equipment is gassed up or whatever needs to be. The batteries are all charged or whatever. So at any given time, any moment's notice that we can jump on the rigs and go. That's really the goal, obviously, is to be ready all the time. So 45 people that we have. Other roles that we do besides putting fires out is we do a lot of fire prevention education. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is Fire Prevention Week, so it's kind of a big deal, and I'm glad that you invited me to come on this program to kind of talk about that and highlight a little bit. Especially during Fire Prevention Week. We do implement some community risk reduction, like we do fire and life safety inspections on some commercial and residential properties too, just to make sure that egresses are left open, that smoke detectors work, smoke alarm systems work, carbon monoxide systems are active and working properly. Make sure that everything that's supposed to be emergency lighting, emergency exit lighting, I mean, you name it, we kind of try to do our best to maintain that within the city. All at the same token as this isn't our full-time job. So we do this on a very part-time level. I'm glad to have an employer that's very very open to allowing me to do some of this work that needs to be done, and it's very, very important, and I'm just glad to be able to do that.
Great. So you mentioned this week's Fire Prevention Week, and you talked about a lot of the things that you do. How do you market this stuff? How does the public know about these things that they need to kind of keep an eye out for, businesses as well? And then a couple of nights ago, today is Tuesday, a couple of nights ago, obviously, we heard a lot of alarms going throughout the town. Operation Edith is what it's called. How is that included in this week as well?
Yeah, good question. So Operation Edith stands for Exit Drills in the Home, EDITH. And so what we asked, and you maybe saw our video on social media, we actually asked the community to practice their exit drill. How would you get out of your house and practice it with your families, and find 2 ways out if it's possible, and then find a safe meeting place. So whether it's the neighbor's mailbox across the street, or the front yard, or the backyard, I mean, just to have at least to have a spot to meet, and then practice that, and then turn on your lights on the outside. And we actually do count all those. Last year we had 1,086 households that participated in it. And this year we're down a little bit. We had just over, I think it was 1,025, something to that effect. I can't remember exactly, but so we're grateful that there's a lot of people to do that. And I remember it when I was a tyke, watching the fire trucks come around town. That was a big deal to see that. And the funny story is we used to do it on Wednesday nights, which I had one of my good friends ask me at one time. She says, "Why do you guys do it on Wednesday night? It's church night." I'm like, "Gosh, I don't know. It's just because we've always done it that way."
Right.
So we actually changed it, and it's a great kickoff to Fire Prevention Week by having it on Sunday evening. So that's what we did this year. So, like I said, good kickoff. We're grateful to be able to do it. A little history on Fire Prevention Week, and I had to research this a little bit so you can tell. Every year, the week of October 9th has been designated Fire Prevention Week since 1925. And it started on October 9th, typically, because it's the anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And it burned like 3.3 square miles, and it killed like 100,000 people. It was incredible, and just huge devastation to the city of Chicago, which, on the silver lining to that, created a huge economic upturn with that, and became a huge metropolitan area like it is today. So the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Agency, or National Fire Protection Association, actually markets this quite well, and we do a lot of research with it. So this year, its main focus is fire safety in the kitchen. And so we really kind of take that on. And so how we market it a lot is with the help of Studio One and their staff, is we did a lot of promotional videos, smoke alarms, smoke detectors. We'll see that this week. We've also done fire extinguishers, how to safely operate that by using the acronym PASS, P-A-S-S, pull the pin, aim, sweep the base, or squeeze the trigger and sweep the base of the fire. We just put that out today on social media, which is good. Have a couple other things, and then because of the pandemic, we kind of had to change up some things how we normally would do it, and we created once again partnering with Studio One to have some. Instead of having the children come from the schools like they normally would, or us go to them, we produced videos just like they were there, and so we tried to bring it as best as we could to them. So most of the public won't see that. The children will see that typically in school. So, we're grateful to be able to punt as much as we could to make this become a reality. But, we just tried our best, is basically all we could. So,
Sure.
We have a Fire Prevention Week committee that's headed up by one of our firefighters. His name is Justin Jiskut. He did a great job. He partners with one of our assistant chiefs, Jake Olson, and they've both done a great job at marketing it and coming up with different ideas and how can we do this differently than we normally would. Typically, it's we've got guys that take the whole week off of work and they go visit daycares and schools and everybody under the sun to promote fire safety, but obviously for obvious reasons we can't do that this year. So they thought a little bit outside the box and came up with this solution, and I'm super proud of them. I'm super proud of everybody that's on the committee that made this a reality, and just thankful that we have great caliber people like that on our department to be able to come up with these things.
100% for sure. And then of course, when you were a tyke, did the fire trucks, did they have tires or were they just on horses at that time?
We joke around about that with our first assistant chief, Ray Henriksen, and he's been on the fire department for 35 years, which is incredible. And so we often joke around about that with him.
Funny. So obviously, Marshall Fire Department is always trying to bring in more firefighters. There's an open house once a year. What is the process to become a firefighter? Is it a volunteer position or is it a paid position?
That's a good question. It's a kind of a combination of both, really.
Yeah.
We're what's called paid on call firefighters. So we all carry pagers around, and most people have seen us, carrying these things around with us. And basically, we wait for it to go off. And we'll respond at 365 days a year at any moment's notice to go. But to become a person that actually gets to wear one of those, which is an extreme honor, I think, to have that ability to do that, is first thing we ask is that you have to apply, and we do. It's open 365 days a year on the City of Marshall's website. You can go there and download, I think, the application, or it's all web-based now. I think it's just changed over to that. Fill out the application. We typically do a one round a year. This last year was unique. We did 2 separate hiring rounds, but we normally do one per year. Fill out the application, it gets added to the list, and we'll call you when we're ready to do the round. So we've had some people that kind of get upset because they filled it out in May, but we didn't contact them till maybe the next March or whatever. So we just keep it on file for that. And then after that, it's a written test. And the test consists of general knowledge questions, and it's a firefighting 101. It's not necessarily questions about firefighting. It's about a good knowledge of common sense is what we call it. And I've asked people about it, and they've said the same thing. People that have taken it too. So if you pass that, you get to. We invite you to take the physical ability testing, and it's 7 obstacles or 8 obstacles that you do, and then from there it's oral interviews. If you pass that, it's got a time requirement, and after that we do oral interviews like I mentioned, and then some general OSHA physicals after that. Once you pass all that, we hand you a pager, we get you some turnout gear, and then we get you into training. So it's quite a process. There's been people that have joked that it's quite a too much of a process maybe, but we really are looking for the best people to be part of the fire department. There's just a lot of knowledge to retain and to hold on to and implement it at any moment's notice. So.
Sure, yep. And volunteer paid. It's now paid, right?
Paid on call. So we do receive a very small compensation for what we do by the hour, yes.
Good. All right. So, Quentin, as you tour houses and businesses and you kind of look around, and sometimes maybe you're there on purpose looking at some of these places, what gives you the most heartburn?
Yeah, heartburn's a very interesting way to describe that, but it's very clever. And I kind of look at it like I would say if I were to put something to it, I would say smoke alarms, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are by far the biggest thing that I find or we find that are either inoperable or on the wall and haven't been checked in years, or the batteries have been pulled out and they're sitting on the counter. We have 9-volt batteries at the firehouse that we will give you if you ask. I mean, we have boxes of them that we will give you. Only 9 volts. We don't have anything else typically. So if they run out, just please ask. We'll get it. We'll get them to you until we run out. We would rather do that than they go bad. So one thing that I just super don't understand is why we wouldn't just stick one of those back in. Because that's going to save your life. It literally will save your life.
Totally, yeah.
And so I can't stress that enough, how many times we've seen that. Yeah. And one of our fire reports, it actually asks, were they there? And if they were there, were they operable? And, it's sad to see how many times I have to check that they were inoperable. So big plug that I want to make sure that people make sure that they check their smoke detectors at least monthly and change the batteries. At a minimum once a year, but we typically say 2 times a year around the time that you change out your time for daylight savings time, which is awesome, by the way. And I just want to really get this plug in there too. Smoke detectors only have a shelf life of 10 years. Actually, smoke alarms are called in the code book. Smoke alarms only have a shelf life of 10 years. If you take the smoke alarm off of the wall or off the ceiling and look at the back, there's a date code on it. If it's outside of 10 years, there's a possibility that it may not activate when you need it to. So if it's outside of 10 years, just throw it away and replace it. You may have to hire an electrician to help you, especially if it's hardwired in, unless you buy the same kind, that plug and play type of thing. Of course, I didn't have that option when I had to change mine out, because this happened to me. I tested mine at home, same exact thing. There wasn't one in my house. This is only 2 years ago. Not one in my house that worked. They were only like right at 10 years. So I can't stress that enough. And also, not only do they sometimes not operate, we don't have enough of it in our house. So I kind of wrote down here, when you need them, and you need to have them in every sleeping room, outside every sleeping room, and it's technically stated as the room in the path of the means of egress, or the hallway leaving, actually, is what that means, and at least on every floor, including the basement. And once again, 10-year shelf life. They make sealed smoke alarms that have a battery in it that lasts perfect 10 years, give or take, obviously, but you could get that, slap it on the wall, you don't have to worry about it for 10 years, which is awesome. So get some of those. And last but not least is carbon monoxide alarms. Those only have a shelf life of 5 years. So it's confusing. Smoke alarms, 10 years, carbon monoxide, 5 years. Like smoke alarms, they have a date code on the back, same thing. Now, if your smoke alarms or your carbon monoxide alarms do not have a date code on the back, they're too old. They have to have a date code. If they don't, chuck them and just buy new ones. And here's what the law, this is actually Minnesota statute, reads this about carbon monoxide alarms, that every single family dwelling and every dwelling unit in a multifamily dwelling must have an approved and operational carbon monoxide alarm installed within 10 feet of each room lawfully used for sleeping purposes. That's all it reads. I kind of like to throw in a little plug in there to put it at least on every room, on every level, but at a minimum, 10 feet outside every legal group of sleeping rooms is what it needs to be. So,
good. One more question for you. Fire call out in the country. How do the fire trucks find an in-town address, or especially an out-of-town address? Does the dispatcher give you directions, personal cell phones? How do you paper map?
Yeah,
it's old school.
It's a great question. So there's technology is really our friend when it comes to this thing. So what we actually do have is we subscribe to an app called Active 911, and when the dispatchers receive a call, they push it out, create an incident report, which basically sends a signal to our cell phones that gives us a map, which is awesome. Now, I have driven clear across the opposite side of the city, thinking I was going in the right direction, but totally in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It happens, you know what I mean? Sometimes we can ask the dispatcher and they'll give us directions on how to get there. A lot of times they'll give us the name, if it's Brad Gruhot's house, or, we got to hang a left at the cow at the corner of the pasture near Farmer Bob's house or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's whatever, by any means necessary. And sometimes you can see it from where you're headed. So you don't really need much direction when it comes to that. So pagers, dispatchers will give it to us. We have used paper maps. We have plat books in a lot of our trucks that we can look back on if we need to. Like I said, Active 911, and we also, this is very interesting, we have digital dashboards in the fire station. So as soon as we get a run, just like the same technology that goes to our phones, we have television screens inside the fire station that plot it immediately. So the guys can look up and they can see the address, what the run is, and then they see a map of where to go and directions on how to get there. So if the engine operator shows up a little bit before everybody else, he or she can look up at it and find out where they need to go and make mental notes for themselves. And the whole idea behind that is so you don't have to get on the radio and plug it up with, how do I get to this next spot? Because it's very important. There might be information that needs to be transmitted that if you're plugging it up, asking for directions, that somebody else can't get through.
Sure. Lots of detail. That goes all into finding houses, and the importance of getting there quickly, because what's your goal turnaround time? I suppose it kind of depends on, from the time they call in, and depends on, I suppose, by where they live.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have it's called turnout time. We do monitor it. Typically, we try to have a first arriving officer on scene in 4.5 minutes or so. But typically the engine or the first truck won't make it there until about 10 minutes in.
Sure.
And we have to remember, this isn't our full-time job.
Right.
And so we have to get to the firehouse, we have to put all our gear on, so we have to go from where we're at, drop what we're doing, go to the house,
Yep.
put our gear on, jump in the truck, and then go to your incident. And it takes some time to do that. And we've had people that, it just feels like it takes forever.
Sure.
And, we get called to people's worst time ever in their lives,
right.
is how we describe it to people. And when it's really happening, time stands still really
Sure.
for people.
Okay. Well, good. All right. So thanks, Quentin, for all those details. Let's talk about some of the things looking forward to October. As I mentioned, today is Tuesday, this Thursday, and every second Thursday of October, you host an open house. Obviously, a little bit different this year.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So we'll have to do. We would love to open the house up and let everybody walk through it and take a look at it and go that route. But unfortunately, this year we're just not able to do that. So we kind of had to think outside the box, and we still want to show people that we're doing things. We're around the house. We're letting people see us, and we want to see you at the same token. So this Thursday, October, what is the 8th? October 8th, at starting at 5 p.m., we're doing a drive-through pulled pork feed. So we got 300 pounds of pork butt or shoulder or whatever it is that some of our firefighters are going to make in their smokers at home. Some guys just can't get enough of that stuff. I will not be smoking anything, so they're going to take over for all that. They're going to smoke all this meat. They're going to shred it up, and we'll get it ready so you can have a pulled pork sandwich, a bag of chips, and I think a popper of water, and it's all for $7. Super cheap. We're not looking to make money on this thing. We just want to help feed the community if we can, and have you come through. So we're asking that people use Marvin Schwann Drive. We're going to be putting a map out on social media. Marvin Schwann Drive down to A Street and then into our parking lot and exit out onto Saratoga Street. So $7 pulled pork feed. We do have things on our Facebook page if you would take a look at that. And so
good.
We're trying to plan for it, but
right.
not knowing what's going on, and we're doing our best.
And every organization, every business is having to do different things, and this is going to be no different. Obviously, this week is also SMSU homecoming. A lot of things are not happening. Gala's not happening. Obviously, the football games, some other things aren't happening. There is a parade, however. So the parade is happening this upcoming Saturday, 11 o'clock. Come on out and enjoy what you can enjoy. I don't know, there's obviously going to be some limitations there as well. Women's Rural Advocacy Program is having a month-long fundraiser. A lot of people know this as RAP. There's an online fundraiser that can be found at 32auctions.com/RAP. So give that a look, bid on some items. I also want to touch on another event with Hope Harbor. I kind of touched about the shooting event earlier. Hope Harbor is having two events. They're having one in Sioux Falls this upcoming Saturday the 10th. It's an in-person fundraiser. On the 24th is an online fundraiser. So if you're at all interested in supporting a really cool nonprofit organization in Hope Harbor, take a look at the Hope Harbor event. I'm blanking on the name of it, but look at the Hope Harbor Facebook page for more details. Elections. Obviously, we all know elections are coming up fast. They are about a month away. There's going to be a few debates upcoming. October 14th, right here on campus, is our state representative and our state senators. They'll be having a debate on October 14th, next Wednesday. And also on the 20th, over at the YMCA, we're going to be doing some of our local races, including the mayoral and the school board. The public is not welcome. This is going to be Studio One. Our friends that are doing this here today will be televising that for everybody for those 2 evenings. The Haunted Tower is back out at the Merritt Center. This is going to be on Friday the 30th and Saturday the 31st. Obviously, Quentin, you're very familiar with the Merritt Center.
Especially where the tower's, where it's being held. So we train in there quite often.
Right.
Ironically, we have training scheduled for one of the nights they want to decorate. So
right.
I think Cassie reached out and said, "Hey, by the way, are you needing to use that night?" Or?
Come on out. I do know they are going to do their best to keep it all social distance. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Friday the 30th, Saturday the 31st, out at the Fire Tower at the Merritt Center. One chamber event of note, speaking of elections, Marty Seifert, former state representative, is going to be coming into our Young Professionals group to talk about the upcoming elections. So With that, all these updates can be found on our website, marshallmn.org, the website, visitmarshallmn.com. And I want to put a plug in for a sports site, marshsports.com. You can find a lot of things about like golf tournaments and high school sports. Of course, this upcoming weekend, we're going to have a return of football and volleyball. So very exciting with that. Thanks again for tuning in today, and thanks, Quentin, for being my guest.
Yes, no, thanks for having me. It might get a little windy. I'm sorry if that happened.
No, that's perfectly fine. It does happen. Next month, I'm going to have one of your colleagues, Jim Marshall, the Marshall Police Chief, will be my guest next month in November. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next month.